Eric Clapton, reveals the horrors of Pattie Boyd divorce. Eric Clapton was born Eric Patrick Clapton on March 30th, 1945 in Ripley, Surrey, England. From humble beginnings, he grew up under unusual family circumstances, raised by his grandparents while believing for many years that his mother was actually his sister. This unconventional start in life shaped his sense of identity and contributed to the deep emotional well that would later define his music. From an early age, Clapton showed an extraordinary sensitivity to sound and an almost instinctive connection to the guitar. By his teens, he was already immersed in the world of American blues, obsessively listening to the recordings of legends like B.B. King, Robert Johnson, and Muddy Waters. These influences did not just inspire him, they became the backbone of his style, setting him apart from other young guitarists of his generation. In the 1960s, Clapton's reputation began to grow rapidly as he joined and transformed several iconic bands. He first achieved recognition with the Yardbirds, where his fiery playing earned him the nickname Slowhand. Not long after, he became a central force in John Mayall and the Bluesbreakers, where his solos electrified audiences and confirmed his status as a rising star. But it was with the power trio Cream, formed alongside Ginger Baker and Jack Bruce, that Clapton's fame exploded. Cream's blend of hard rock, psychedelia, and blues was groundbreaking, and Clapton's soaring guitar solos on tracks like Sunshine of Your Love and Crossroads turned him into a rock god. In the years that followed, he co-founded Blind Faith and collaborated with numerous artists, continually pushing musical boundaries. Clapton's solo career, which began in earnest in the 1970s, established him not just as a master guitarist, but also as a heartfelt songwriter and vocalist. Songs such as Layla, Wonderful Tonight, Cocaine, and Tears in Heaven became deeply personal statements that resonated with millions. Layla, co-written with Duane Allman during his time with Derek and the Dominoes, expressed his unrequited love for Pattie Boyd, who was then married to his friend George Harrison. Years later, Tears in Heaven was born out of the unimaginable grief of losing his young son Connor in a tragic accident, proving that Clapton's music was not only about technical brilliance, but also about channeling the deepest human emotions into sound. Throughout his life, Clapton struggled with personal demons, most notably drug and alcohol addiction. At the height of his fame, he nearly lost everything to heroin and later to alcoholism. His battle was long and painful, but his recovery became an important part of his legacy. He emerged stronger, openly discussing his journey to sobriety and using his platform to help others. In fact, Clapton went on to establish the Crossroads Center in Antigua, a treatment facility for people suffering from substance abuse, demonstrating his compassion and commitment to giving back. His personal resilience mirrored the endurance of his artistry, showing that even the most gifted individuals face struggles that must be overcome with courage. Clapton's contributions to music have been recognized with an unparalleled number of honors, including being the only three-time inductee into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, once as a solo artist and separately as a member of both the Yardbirds and Cream. His Grammy Awards, his countless world tours, and his collaborations with artists ranging from B.B. King to Phil Collins testify to his versatility and enduring relevance. His ability to cross genres, whether blues, rock, pop, or even reggae with his beloved rendition of I Shot the Sheriff, proved that his artistry transcended musical boundaries. Beyond the accolades, Eric Clapton's greatest tribute lies in the emotional connection he has created with generations of listeners. His guitar playing is not only technically brilliant, but also profoundly soulful, often described as a voice in itself. Every bend of a string, every cry from his Stratocaster seems to communicate something deeper than words can express. Fans have often said that Clapton doesn't just play the blues, he feels the blues, and in doing so, he allows the listener to feel it too. Eric Clapton's personal life, particularly during the height of his fame in the late 1960s and 1970s, was marked by a series of turbulent relationships, deep struggles with addiction, and a string of complicated romantic entanglements. One of his most notable early partners was Alice Ormsby Gore, the daughter of British aristocrat and politician Lord Harlech. Their relationship began in the late 1960s and lasted until around 1974, a time when Clapton was deeply immersed in the London rock scene. Alice, who moved in the same elite social circles, was a striking figure of that era, and the two quickly became inseparable. Unfortunately, their romance was not built on stability, but rather on the destructive common ground of heroin addiction. Clapton and Ormsby Gore's years together were consumed by the drug, and although they shared a bond, their mutual dependency on heroin ultimately eroded the relationship, leaving lasting scars on both of their lives. Clapton would later reflect with regret on this period, acknowledging the chaos and devastation caused by their shared addiction. During this same era, Clapton briefly dated funk singer Betty Davis, who was known for her electrifying stage presence, bold personality, and a brief but impactful marriage to jazz legend Miles Davis. Though their relationship did not last long, it highlighted Clapton's fascination with strong, creative women who were deeply embedded in the music world. Betty, with her groundbreaking fusion of funk and rock, was very different from Clapton's more blues-oriented roots, and while the relationship was short-lived, it was another example of the eclectic and sometimes impulsive choices Clapton made in his personal life. Perhaps the most defining and infamous chapter in Clapton's romantic life was his involvement with George Harrison's wife, Pattie Boyd. Clapton and Harrison had become close friends in the late 1960s, collaborating musically and sharing an almost brotherly bond. But Clapton's friendship with Harrison became complicated when he fell deeply in love with Boyd, a former model and one of the most iconic muses of the rock era. She had inspired Harrison's songs such as Something, and her beauty and charm captivated Clapton to the point of obsession. This love triangle created immense personal turmoil and spilled over into Clapton's music, most notably in his band Derek and the Dominoes' 1970 masterpiece, Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs, where the title track, Layla, was a passionate, anguished declaration of his feelings for Boyd. Harrison and Boyd eventually divorced in 1977, and 2 years later, on March 27, 1979, Boyd married Clapton in Tucson, Arizona. What might have seemed like a romantic triumph, however, quickly soured. Their marriage was plagued by Clapton's infidelities, heavy drinking, and episodes of domestic violence. In later years, Clapton himself confessed in a 1999 interview with the Sunday Times that he had raped and abused Boyd during their marriage, candidly admitting he was a full-blown alcoholic at the time and believed he was entitled to sex. These admissions cast a shadow over his legacy, revealing the dark consequences of his addictions and self-destructive behavior. While married to Boyd, Clapton began an affair with Yvonne Kelly, who was the manager of AIR Studios Montserrat, where he often recorded. Both Clapton and Kelly were married to other people, but their clandestine relationship led to the birth of a daughter, Ruth Kelly Clapton, in January 1985. For years, Ruth's existence was hidden from the public, a secret kept within a small circle, until in 1991 the press uncovered that she was Clapton's child. The revelation added another layer of complexity to Clapton's already troubled personal life and strained his marriage with Boyd, who was devastated by the affair. Clapton and Boyd had long desired children, but struggled with infertility, even undergoing in vitro fertilization, IVF, treatments in 1984. Their attempts ended in heartbreak, with miscarriages compounding the emotional strain already present in their turbulent marriage. Clapton's pattern of infidelity continued, and during an affair with Italian model and actress Lori Del Santo, she gave birth to their son, Connor Clapton, on August 21, 1986. Boyd was left crushed when Clapton confessed to fathering another child outside their marriage, and by 1989 she divorced him, saying she was utterly devastated by the betrayal. Tragedy struck only 2 years later when Connor died at the age of 4 on March 20th, 1991, after accidentally falling from a 53rd floor window of a New York City apartment building. The devastating loss nearly destroyed Clapton emotionally, but it also inspired one of his most poignant and enduring songs, Tears in Heaven, written in his son's memory. Clapton's romantic life eventually took a more stable turn in the late 1990s. In 1998, at age 53, he met Melia McEnery, a 22-year-old administrative assistant, at a party held in his honor after a performance in Columbus, Ohio. Their relationship began quietly, with Clapton keeping it private for nearly a year before going public in 1999. Unlike his earlier relationships, which were often marked by turmoil, addiction, or infidelity, his bond with McEnery seemed grounded in stability and mutual respect. On January 1, 2002, they married at St. Mary Magdalene Church in Ripley, the same village where Clapton was born. Together, they went on to build a family and have 3 daughters, a chapter in Clapton's life that brought him a sense of renewal and peace after decades of chaos, heartbreak, and personal tragedy. When Eric Clapton has spoken about the painful unraveling of his marriage to model and muse Pattie Boyd, his words have carried the weight of both regret and raw honesty. The union between the legendary guitarist and the woman who inspired some of rock's most iconic love songs had once seemed like the culmination of a romantic dream. But Clapton has admitted that the reality was far more complicated, and its end left scars that never fully healed. "It was one of the darkest chapters of my life," Clapton confessed, reflecting on the turbulence of their divorce. "I thought I had won this incredible prize, but what I didn't realize was that love alone doesn't make a marriage work. I brought so much baggage into it, and that baggage eventually crushed us both." For Clapton, the horrors of the divorce were not limited to the legal and financial entanglements. The emotional devastation was overwhelming. He had pursued Boyd for years, famously stealing her away from his close friend George Harrison, and when she finally became his wife, he imagined that happiness would be permanent. But substance abuse, infidelity, and his own deep-seated insecurities undermined the relationship at every turn. "I was drinking myself into oblivion most nights," he admitted, "and when I wasn't drunk, I was lost in paranoia and jealousy. Pattie deserved stability and kindness, and I gave her the opposite." Boyd, who had endured years of heartbreak in her marriage to Harrison, found herself once again in a storm of neglect and volatility. The divorce proceedings themselves were agonizing for Clapton. He described the feeling of watching a dream slip through his fingers in slow motion, each legal meeting and court appearance hammering home the reality that the life he had envisioned with Boyd was over. "It felt like watching a house you built with your own hands burn to the ground and knowing you lit the match," Clapton said somberly. He remembered moments of desperate pleading, nights when he would call her repeatedly, hoping for reconciliation, only to be met with silence. "There's nothing more humiliating than begging for someone's love when you know you've already destroyed it." Adding to the horror was the public nature of their separation. The media, fascinated by the tangled triangle between Clapton, Boyd, and Harrison, treated the divorce like a never-ending soap opera. Clapton confessed that the gossip columns and tabloid headlines made him feel stripped bare. "I couldn't even grieve in private," he recalled. "Every argument, every rumor, every cruel joke was splashed across the papers. It wasn't just my heartbreak, it was entertainment for millions of strangers." The constant exposure intensified his sense of isolation, pushing him deeper into self-destructive habits. What made the ordeal even more devastating was the music that surrounded it. Boyd had inspired Clapton's masterwork, Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs, a passionate outpouring of unrequited love, as well as later hits like Wonderful Tonight. But in the aftermath of the divorce, those songs became haunting reminders of what he had lost. Every time I played them, it felt like ripping open an old wound, he said. The songs were supposed to be declarations of love, but they turned into elegies for a marriage I had ruined. Clapton's audiences heard beauty in the music, but for him, the beauty was inseparable from pain. Clapton has also been candid about the guilt he carried over the way his pursuit of Boyd affected his friendship with George Harrison. Even after Boyd left Harrison and married him, Clapton could not escape the shadow of betrayal. "George forgave me in ways I didn't deserve," he admitted. "But deep down, I think part of me knew that our marriage was built on shaky ground because of that history. You can't build happiness on someone else's heartbreak." That sense of karmic consequence, as Clapton described it, haunted the marriage and magnified the collapse when it finally came. Looking back, Clapton has acknowledged that the horrors of the divorce taught him difficult but essential lessons about love, addiction, and accountability. He has said that losing Boyd forced him to confront his demons in a way he had long avoided. At the time, it felt like the end of everything, he recalled. But in hindsight, it was the shock I needed to realize that if I didn't change, I would lose not only my marriage, but my life. Though the marriage ended in bitterness and grief, Clapton has expressed gratitude that Boyd eventually found peace and happiness beyond their relationship. "She deserved a better life than I could give her then," he admitted. And maybe that's the hardest part, accepting that the best way to love someone is to let them go. In revealing the horrors of his divorce from Pattie Boyd, Eric Clapton did more than recount a personal tragedy. He exposed the human fragility behind the myth of the rock star. His story of obsession, loss, and painful self-awareness continues to resonate, not only as a cautionary tale but also as a testament to the complicated, often destructive ways that love and fame can intertwine.